Hello students, welcome to Accounting 2302, Managerial Accounting. This is Dr. Mercado speaking. In today's lecture, we are going to be covering exercise 1917. Now, exercise 1917, let me see, it deals with the reciprocal services method. This information can be found on the appendix of your chapter 19 book, okay? Now, this is a complicated problem. That is why I have decided to do a video for you, kind of to explain it in a more simplified way of how to solve for this problem. Now, before you begin working on the problem, make sure that you have read the section that deals with the reciprocal services method. Like I said, it is in the appendix. There's an illustration or an example, a detailed example provided. I did not copy it all here to the screen because you do have access to the ebook. I just copied bits and pieces, but make sure that you do read the section. Okay. So, in the reciprocal services method, we consider all inter-support department services, and it is the most accurate of the three support department allocation methods used. Now, it is the most accurate, but it is the most difficult to implement, especially when we have a large number of departments involved. Okay, when we are calculating using the reciprocal services method, steps 1 through 3 are the same for the direct and sequential methods, which do not change. So the first 3 steps are not the same in the reciprocal services method. It is important to note that support departments never allocate their own costs to themselves, okay? So if we are distributing the cost of a department, in this particular case, we've got janitorial, cafeteria, cutting, and assembly. If we are distributing janitorial costs, we are not going to distribute janitorial costs to ourselves. We're only going to distribute janitorial costs to the cafeteria, the cutting, and the assembly. The same thing, if I'm the cafeteria department, I will not be allocating cafeteria costs to us. I will only be allocating cafeteria costs to the janitorial, cutting, and assembly. So it's very important that you remember that support departments never allocate their own costs to themselves. Before we begin doing any of the calculations to do the allocation, we need to allocate the other costs to our department, get the total, and then from there reallocate, okay? So in step 4, the proportional usage of each support department's cost driver by other departments to which its costs are to be allocated is determined. And then in steps 5, the support department costs are allocated simultaneously among the departments. And this is done by using algebraic equations with variables for unknown quantities. And they give you an example of how to run those algebraic equations, okay? So make sure that you do read through all that section carefully. This is just a snapshot of the appendix. Make sure that you do read it in full before you begin working on your homework. Okay, so now let's tackle the problem at hand. Let's see what the problem says, okay? So, Blue Africa produces laptops and desktops computers. The company's production activities mainly occur in what the company calls its laser and forming departments. That is where we make the laptops, in laser and in forming. Okay. Now, the cafeteria and the security departments support the company's production activities and allocate costs based on the number of employees and square feet, respectively. The total cost of the security department is $273,000. The total cost of the cafeteria department is $180,000. The number of employees and the square footage in each of the departments is as follows, and they give us the data. Using the reciprocal services method of support department cost allocation, we have to determine the total cost from the security department that should be allocated to the cafeteria department and to each of the production departments. So that would be the laser and the forming. So in this example, or in this problem, we are going to allocate the security department's cost to the cafeteria, the laser, and the forming. Okay, so we have costs related to the security department. That is a support department. They don't produce or manufacture the goods, but their job is to safeguard the assets, the employees, whatever the case might be. There's costs associated with that. So now we need to distribute those costs to each of their respective departments. Now for the security department, according to the problem, the security department support the company's production and allocate costs based on the number of employees. Okay. So, So it says the cafeteria and the security department support the company's production department and allocate costs. Okay, so for the cafeteria, we use it based on the number of employees. For the security department, we use based on the number of square feet that they are safeguarding. Okay, so we have to keep in mind we are only doing one distribution. We're only going to distribute the security department costs into the other three departments: cafeteria, laser, and forming. Okay, so I'm going to kind of like illustrate it before we go into the actual problem solving, okay? Because we need to understand the data. That way, if we understand the data, we know what's going on and why we're doing what we're doing, okay? So we have the operating division, okay? In the operating division, we have the laser department and we've got the forming department, okay? Now, these are the two departments that actually manufacture the goods, okay? They make the laptops, okay? We've got the I misspelled it. We've got the laser department and the forming department. Now below that we have support departments, okay? These departments do not make anything. They don't produce anything. They're just there to provide support to the operating division, okay? So people get hungry. They need a cafeteria to go eat. The cafeteria is there to provide food for the laser department and the forming department employees and the securities if needed, okay? Now, the security department oversees or safeguards the assets or the people, make sure that everything's safe, that there's nobody intruding to the departments. They take care of the security of the operations, okay? They don't manufacture anything. They're out there providing security services. So we have two support departments. We have the security and we have the cafeteria. It's important we organize our thoughts, okay? So now the security department, the cost is distributed based on square feet. Okay? So the cost is distributed based on square feet. For the cafeteria, the distribution is based on the number of employees. That is how we distribute the cost for the security and the cafeteria support departments, okay? So, now that we know this data, let's go ahead and figure out how much of the distribution is going to go to each of the departments, okay? Now, the problem asks us that we need to distribute the security cost into all of the other three departments. So, we're going to distribute the security. It's going to go to the laser, okay? The security is going to go to the forming, and the security cost, that's what the problem wants, is going to go into the cafeteria, okay? So we're going to be allocating cost, the security cost, into the three other departments. Now, remember what the problem said over here on our notes. It says support departments never allocate their own costs to themselves. So the security department is just going to get their costs and distribute it to the other three departments. Now, there's a caveat to that. Okay? It would be very easy if that's all we needed to do. But the problem is that the security department is going to get some of the cost of the cafeteria. Okay? So, the security department is going to get some of the cost of the cafeteria, and then they're going to have a balance again. So, we need to make sure that we allocate the total of my security cost plus any costs I get from the cafeteria. The sum of those two things is going to get redistributed into the other three sections. That way my security costs, when they're distributed, goes down to a zero. Okay? So what are we going to do first? Okay? So we're going to go first. We're going to bring in our three departments that we're going to allocate to. We're going to allocate to the laser. We're going to allocate to the forming. And we're going to allocate to the cafeteria. So when we're dealing with the security department, we're going to be allocating to those three departments. Okay. Now, when we allocate the cafeteria cost, we're going to allocate the cafeteria cost to the laser, to the forming, and to the security. Okay? And then cafeteria will be left with a 0. Now remember, the cafeteria is going to get some of the costs of the security department. Okay? So now that we know what are we distributing, the security department is going to distribute their costs to laser forming and cafeteria. The cafeteria is going to distribute their costs to laser forming and security. Okay, so now we get remember, security is distributed based on square feet. So we're distributing the cost of the security department to the laser. The laser has 4,000 square feet. The forming has 1,600 square feet. And the cafeteria has 2,400 square feet. Okay, so let's see what that gives us. So I'm going to be distributing my cost for the security department amongst 8,000 square feet. Now let's look at the cafeteria. Okay, the cafeteria is going to get distributed based on the number of employees. How many employees do we have in the laser? In the laser, we've got 40 employees. In the forming, we've got 50 employees. And in the security, we've got 10 employees. Okay, so now I've got 100 employees. So the cost of my cafeteria cost is going to be allocated to these 100 employees. Now, we're going to figure out the allocation base. Okay, so what are we going to do? So I'm going to get my laser square feet divided by my total square feet, and that's going to give me my percentage. Okay, so basically 50%, let me do this in percentage, 50% of my security cost is going to go to the laser. Okay, I'm going to get my 1,600 divided by my 8,000. Okay, 20% is going to go to my forming department, and then 30% is going to go to my cafeteria. Okay, so that gives me 100%. We're going to do the same thing for the cafeteria. We're going to go ahead and I'm going to get my 40 employees, and I'm going to divide it by my 100 total employees. So that's going to give me 40%. Okay, goes to my laser. 50 divided by 100. 50% goes to my forming, and then 10% will go to my security. Okay. Okay, so I hope I have not lost anybody there. Up to this point, all we did was figure out, okay, I've got my operating departments. Okay, these are the ones that actually make the product, and I've got my support departments, the security, and the cafeteria. The question asked me to distribute my security cost, okay, to the laser, the forming, and the cafeteria. Now, the issue here is the security department is going to get back some of the cafeteria costs. So I have to figure out my total cost for security so I can allocate. Once I have my total cost, that is what we're looking for, I can apply these ratios and calculate how much is going to go to laser, forming, and cafeteria. Okay, this is what we're going to be focusing on. We're focusing on the security department. That is our focus. Okay, that's what the problem wants. Right, for now, that's all they want. In the real world, you will be doing the same thing for the cafeteria department. But for purposes of this problem, we're focusing on the security department. Okay. So now that I've calculated my percentages, now I know how much each of them is going to get. What I don't know is the total cost. Okay. So for that, we're going to be able to use a formula. Okay. The total costs to be allocated from the security department. Security is going to be with an S. Okay. Okay. So S is going to equal, okay, what is my cost for the security department? Okay. The cost for the security department is $273,000 right there. So the cost of the security department is $273,000. Okay. That does not include any of the cost that is being received from the cafeteria. That is just the cost standalone for security. So I've got $273,000, okay, plus, okay, how much of the cafeteria is going to go to the security? 10%. Okay, that is equivalent to 0.10 in decimals. Okay, okay, it's 0.10. Okay, so this is 0.40, this is 0.50, that's 0.10. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and we're going to use that into our equation because we're going to get the total cost of the security department and we're going to add the portion that the security department is going to get from the cafeteria. So we're going to do the 0.10, okay, times the cafeteria. Okay, C is for cafeteria. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and we are going to get the total cost to be allocated from the cafeteria department. So the cafeteria is going to equal, okay, the cost of the cafeteria. Remember, we always look to the problem. The cafeteria cost is $180 right there. Okay. So we're going to get the $180 plus, now, what is the cost of the security department that's going to go to the cafeteria? That is 30%. So this is 0.50, 0.20, 0.30. Okay. So we're going to look at that information right there. Okay. So the total cost to be allocated from the cafeteria department. So the security is going to allocate 30%. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to add the 0.30 times the security department. Okay. So these are the two equations that we're going to be using. Okay. So now that we have this, these are the two equations, we're going to merge them. Okay, we're going to substitute the equation for C into the S equation. Okay, so then we're going to get S from above. S equals to 273, okay, plus, and then we're going to do 0.10 times, and then we're going to bring in the equation for the cafeteria, which is going to be 180,000, okay, plus 0.30 times S. Okay. So all we did was merge the two equations. So we've got the 273 plus the 0.10 times C. What is C? C is this equation. So we're going to plug in the C. The C is the 180,000 plus the 0.30 times S. Okay. Now that we have the equation, we merge both equations into one. Then we can solve for our missing number. We can actually calculate what is S. What is the cost of my security department? So now we're going to do S equals 27. Well, we're going to be simplifying, guys. We're just going to be simplifying the equation. Okay. Okay. Yes, it's plus. Okay. So let's get our calculators. Okay. 0.10 times 180,000. That gives me 18,000. So we're going to do 18,000. Okay. Plus 0.30. 0.30 times S gives me 0.30 S. Okay. Well, let's keep it as like this. Okay, like that. Okay, and then we close it right there. Okay, so all I did here was multiply the 0.10 times the 180. That gave me 18,000, and then I bring in the rest of the equation as is. Okay, so now I've got 273 plus 18,000 plus 0.30 times S. Okay, and that looks like an X. Let me make this a small X so that way it looks more normal. Okay, let me change these to a small x because it looks like we're solving for x and we're not. Okay, so it's just a multiply sign. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to move my 0.30 to the other side of the equation. So I'm going to have 1 minus, because s is 1 minus 0.30 going to give me 273 plus 18,000. So that's how we did it. So I'm moving the 30 cents, the 0.30, I'm sorry. I'm moving the 0.30 to the other side of the equation. S is 1, so 1 minus 0.30, because remember this is a positive. When I move it to the other side of the equation, it becomes a negative. So 1 minus 0.30 equals the 273 plus the 18. The right hand side stays as is. So all I did was move my 0.30 to the left hand side to segregate that, and then so I can be able to solve for S. Okay, so 1 minus okay, I forgot a step. Okay, let me delete this. So here we were supposed to multiply. Okay, so we're supposed to multiply. What's my 0.10? Okay, 0.10 times 0.10. Okay, we forgot to multiply. Okay, so here I multiplied the 0.10 times the 180. That gives me 18. And then I need to multiply the 0.10 times the 0.30. That gives me 0.03. Yes, 0.03. So this I need to change it to 0.03. Okay, so in this first step, okay, we brought in the equation. Okay, and then we're solving. We get the 0.10 times 180. That gives me 18,000. We get the 0.10 times 0.30. 0.10 times 0.30. That gives me 0.03. Okay, and then just keep everything as is. Now that we have that, now we can do the 1 minus 0.03. Okay, equals the 273 plus the 18,000. Okay. So let's see. 1 minus 0.3 gives you 0.97. So we're going to do 0.97. And that's going to equal to 273 plus 18. That's going to give me 291. And this is 0.97 S, because we're solving for S. Okay. And now we can solve. We have 0.97 S is equal to 291. What are we going to do? We're going to have to divide. Okay, so we're going to divide by, I don't know how to do this, like here. So I'm going to do 0.97. I'm going to divide both sides by the 0.97. Okay, let me see if I can make it look a little bit normal. Okay. Okay, here we go. Okay. So we're basically just dividing both sides by 0.97. 0.97 divided by, sorry about that. 0.97 divided by 0.97 gives me a 1, which is my S, okay, which is what we want. We're solving for S. And then we're going to do 291 divided by 0.97. That gives me $300,000. So S is $300,000. That is what we were solving for. Now, we do all of this work for what, miss? Well, we're trying to allocate the security cost to the other three different departments, the laser, the forming, and the cafeteria. Now, the original cost for my security department was $273,000. That we knew. But we also knew that a portion of the cafeteria costs was going to get allocated to the security department. And we didn't know what that number was. So we did not know what that number was. So now we were able to calculate using this formula the amount of the cafeteria cost that's going to be allocated to the security department. So now we know that we have 300,000. My original cost is 273. That means that $27,000 from the cafeteria is going to be put into the security department, okay? Now that I've got my total of 300,000, I can allocate all of my security costs out to the three departments, okay? So now we're going to get working on that. Now, once you solve that 300,000, then the rest becomes a piece of cake, okay? What are we allocating? We are allocating the security to the laser department, okay? So the laser department, when we calculated here, the laser department was going to get 50% of the cost. So we're going to get the 300,000 total cost for the security, and the laser is going to get 50%, which we calculated up here, 50%, okay? So then that's going to give me, let's see, 300,000 times 50%, $150,000. Okay. Now for my forming department, my cost is 300,000 that we're distributing. The forming department was going to get 20% of my cost. Okay. So 300,000 times 20%. That's going to give me 60,000. Okay. And then my cafeteria department was going to get the 300,000, and the cafeteria has a 30% allocation, so we're going to do 30%. So we've got the 300,000 times the 30%. That's going to be $90,000. Okay. So now I know that my security department is going to have a total of 300,000 in costs. That includes their original 273,000 costs for security, plus the portion of the cafeteria cost that was allocated back to the security department, giving me a grand total of the security cost of 300,000 that we calculated down here. Now that I know my total cost for my security and the allocation portion of the cafeteria to the security, I can allocate my total cost of 300,000 to the three departments: the laser department, the forming department, and the cafeteria department. Okay, so this is what each of the departments is going to be charged for my security services. Okay, now if we were to do the same thing for the cafeteria, it would be the same thing. The only thing that would change would be the ratios, and we would have to recalculate the formula using the equations for cafeteria and security. Okay, so that is how you do it. That is how we allocate our security cost to the other departments, whether it be laser, forming, or cafeteria. First, you calculate your total cost, and then once you have that, you simply distribute it to the other departments based on their usage. In this case, we are using square feet for the support department of security, and that is how we allocated it. Okay, so I hope this brings some clarity to how this is done. It's just a matter of setting up two different equations and then solving for what we're wanting to do. In this case, we're solving for S, which is our security. If you were doing this for the cafeteria, then you would be solving for C down here instead of S, and then you would plug the other equation kind of like in reverse, okay? But the same logistics applies. But in this problem, they only asked us for one calculation, which was that of the security department. So you get your two formulas, you merge them, you solve for S. In this case, we solved down for S, and then we were able to get the $300,000. Once you get those amounts, you simply distribute based on your allocation base up here, okay? So it is a little bit challenging, especially if we're not used to using algebraic equations. Don't forget, I forgot up down here to multiply by the 10, the point 10. Remember, the point 10 needs to be multiplied by the 180, and the point 10 needs to be multiplied by the point 30 to get that updated figure down there. The 18,000 is the result of the point 10 times 180. The 0.03 is the result of the point 10 times the point 30. Okay, so don't forget, I forgot, I went back because the numbers didn't make any sense. So don't forget to do that step to distribute that point 10 to the 180 and to the point 30. Okay, so that is it. Practice, practice, practice. You're going to get better at it. Now, in my past, this is when I used to work in banking, this is the method that we would use. We would use it because it gives us, or it yields, the most accurate distribution of our costs by department. And it is a lot of work, okay? So, but it gives us what we want, so we do need to become familiar with it, okay? So, that is it for exercise 1917. If you have any questions or concerns, please do not hesitate to reach out to me, and I will be more than glad to assist. Have a wonderful rest of your week.